before we get started, I did want to send my condolences to two members of the NFL family, the Zimmer family and the McVay family, who lost loved ones here in the last few days. And our prayers and thoughts are with their families and their friends, and wishing them the best. And I wanted to take some time to get together. We got through the trade deadline was here yesterday, so we're in kind of another phase of the season, especially from a personnel standpoint. And so we're moving forward there. We haven't talked in a while, and I'm sure you guys have some questions for me. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to get some of those questions answered and keep pushing forward. So I'll let you guys go.
Dave, obviously 2-5. I don't think anyone anticipated that. How does that change the outlook on, especially from your perspective, as you're continuing to tinker with this roster?
Yeah, it doesn't change the outlook specifically. When you come in year one, what you're doing from the beginning until the end is evaluating. And you're figuring out what the fits are, what your strengths are as a team, what your needs are as a team going forward. And so that was always going to be a big part of year one, and that's going to continue to be a big part of year one. Obviously, at 2-5, that's, like you said, that's not where we want to be. And so you got to continue to take a critical look at how do you improve the team, things that you're doing, how, from a scouting standpoint or whatever it may be in the organization, it hasn't been good enough. And so, like I said in my original press conference when I got hired, one of the fabrics of this going forward is going to be to evaluate what we're doing and to evolve those processes. And so we're going to continue to take a look at that, continue to tinker with things, continue to try to find the right way to win football games in the immediate future, and continue to take the long-term perspective of how we're going to build a championship team, or a team that competes for championships consistently as we go down the road.
Was there anything close yesterday?
Tons of conversations. I mean, the way that this works, when you're going through this process, we talked to all 31 teams, over the course of two weeks. And so had a lot of conversations, during that time. And then when it came down to, it kind of always comes down to the day before and the day of the trade deadline. And yeah, we had talks about, different players, some different players on some different teams that could help us in different spots. And at the end of the day, the value has to equate, for you. And you put a value on a player and what you're willing to give up. And if you can make mistakes when you get over aggressive and you're just doing something to do something. At the end of the day, the value didn't fit for us, and nothing worked out.
It seems like there's a lot of teams that are clumped together this year, maybe this year more than most. Does that change the dynamics of the discussions, and were there more buyers, sellers? How would you assess how other teams were approaching things?
Yeah, there's probably more buyers. When you looked at the amount of trades that actually were consummated, I'd say there was more buyers, and that's probably, and I don't know this to be fact, but probably a function of a lot more parity, not a lot of separation during, throughout the NFC and the AFC, and so you had more people that were trying to make moves to improve their team. And again, we feel good about the team that we have here, and we feel good about the guys that we have here. We need to execute better, and so again, we looked at some things to help improve the team, I'd say in different ways, and again, those didn't materialize. But at the same time, we're excited about the group that we have. We're excited to continue to learn about the group that we have, and again, identify people and players that we can continue to build with.
How did the outcome on Sunday change your thought process in terms of Monday and Tuesday, and how aggressive you might be as a buyer instead of standing pat or potentially being a seller?
Yeah, it's a good question. It didn't, the one game result in New Orleans did not impact my approach and my decision making going into the trade deadline. We're always going to be aggressive to look for ways to improve the team, but we're also going to, as I mentioned, be mindful of what the cost of doing business is. And a lot of times at the trade line, because you have a lot of aggressive buyers, the price goes up on players. And so you can end up, giving away an asset that a higher asset than you normally would at a different time of the year. And again, to trade a draft pick away, a high draft pick away right now for one player, didn't seem like it made a lot of sense at this point. But that didn't have anything to do with the New Orleans game. If it made sense and we could have traded for two players that we felt were going to impact the team, then we would have done it. It just didn't materialize that way.
Sunday, there's some players saying lack of urgency, flat. What did you see in that game on Sunday?
Yeah, I think we got off to a slow start. So, whether, lack of urgency, I'm going to, defer to the players. Those guys were the guys that were in the locker room and we're on the field and, we're interacting with each other. But we did get off to a slow start. And when you get off to a slow start, in this league, you and you're on the road and the crowd gets going and things like that, you have to fight and scrap and claw to get back in. And we weren't able to execute well enough to do that. And so I don't think that's I don't expect to see that here this Sunday. I think it was an opportunity for the team to learn about how they need to approach the games, how they need to prepare, and how we need to get off to a fast start. And I would expect that this week, and we'll go from there.
Well, one of the things that Josh is preaching is like trust the process. Kind of think it's going to take a while. Any concern that may contribute to kind of lack of urgency, like people are not looking at long term more than maybe a quicker.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, every game, it's also unique. I'd say, like, to that question, like the game against New Orleans in particular, I thought it was a little bit of an anomaly of how we've played up to this point. I mean, we've been competitive in every game. Every game's been tight. The games that we've won have been tight up to a certain point. We pulled away there against Houston maybe at the end after the interception, but all those games have been tight. And I think, you're going to, and Josh mentioned it, I've been a part of them. You're going to have some of those outlier games where it's just, you come away with a lot of questions and a lot of whys, but you also can't overreact to that because it is one game in a long season. And so, I think that going forward, we expect to be a team that gets off to a fast start like we have many times here this year and continue to push and continue to progress.
You talk about looking 2 years ahead based on what's happened so far this season from a personnel standpoint. How much is that plan adjusting in maybe areas of need that you thought you wouldn't need to look until a little bit further ahead that you might need to address immediately?
Well, I'd say, first, coming in, the plan was always, when we came in, we talked about at our press conference, the reason we were hired is to build a culture here that can eventually, where we're producing a team year in and year out that's a consistent team, that's consistently competing for championship, that's consistently in the playoffs. And at the same time, we want to improve the team in the short term too. And so you're looking to improve the team in the short term as much as you can, with also having, you also have to have a constant eye to the future and how you're going to build and what 23 looks like and what 24 looks like. And so, in terms of your specific question about how does it change, maybe the urgency in a position and things like that. Well, that's what we're learning. There's going to be certain positions where, are going to be a higher priority at the end of the year based on performance. And that's the reality of the NFL. You base everything on performance and you have to look at, what your strengths and weaknesses are at the end of the year and then make those adjustments going forward. And we'll continue to try to make those adjustments as we go too. If there's an opportunity to get a player that we think is going to improve our team as we go, we're going to, and it fits together, and then we're going to do that now too.
You guys didn't pick up the fifth-year option for Josh Jacobs. I don't think that necessarily ruled out him being here long-term. In your eyes, you mentioned assessment and evaluation. He's obviously played really well this year and maybe, moved himself into another area in terms of the financials. How does that kind of square with you guys? And do you envision him being here long-term?
Yeah, well, I would say first we're, excited the way Josh has played. Josh has, had, as a running back, when you get in the NFL, it can be a short-term thing. It's a tough position to play, and Josh has shown improvement over the course of his career, and I think he's really taken a step this year. His ball security has really improved. He's improved in the pass game. He's improved in pass protection. He's always been a great runner. He continues to be a great runner, and he embodies a lot of the things that we're looking for in terms of a football player. His work ethic, his approach every day. I mean, this guy practices extremely hard, and so Josh has a lot of the qualities that we look for, and a lot of the qualities that we want, going forward. And you have to take those things in terms of how it goes in the future, and extensions and free agency and all those types of things. I mean, that's a long way away. What we're really focused on is having a good week this week. and coming out with a victory on Sunday. And if Josh continues to do what he's doing, things will take care of himself. But couldn't be more proud of him, couldn't be more excited about his development. And then, we'll see and evaluate it as we go.
Are you surprised that the passing game is not really in sync yet? It's still taking this much time to kind of get things on a consistent basis, on week to week?
Yeah, every aspect of our team, we would like to continue to improve at this point. When you're 2-5, I don't think there's anything that you've really done. There isn't anything you've done well enough at 2-5. I think the one thing with the passing game is that the passing game, and every offense is a little bit different. The passing game does take time to develop. There's a level of continuity. There's a level of timing that takes place. And I think the one thing we haven't had is a lot of continuity yet. Hunter, kind of was in and out and battled some things injury-wise. Darren's still kind of battling through some things and working to get back on the field. And so, the offensive line, which is a part of, the pass protection, there was a period of time where we were going through different combinations, trying to find the right group that works. And so, there is a level of, we're looking forward to having a full group out there that's able to work week to week and improve week to week. And, I think that will pay dividends, but, like I said, it hasn't been good enough up to this point. So would we have expected it? Do we want it to be better? Do we expect it to be better? Yes.
So about the offensive line, last year's #1 pick, Alex Leatherwood. If you could put your kind of finger on what happened or didn't happen in that situation, and for him not to be here anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think that what we look at, and when we got down to the 53, or who were the best 53, and who was the best group when it comes to the offensive linemen, what was the best group of offensive linemen that we could keep, that we felt would help us win football games this year, would just be the best combination of players. And at the end of the day, we base that on performance. And so we can't base it on when you were picked. We can't base it on how much you've been paid or whatnot. We have to base it on performance, and we have to base it on the depth of our team too. And at the end of the day, we felt like we made a decision that was best for the football team to keep a group of players that we thought had performed the best throughout the preseason, and we based it on that. And when you base it on performance, it's hard to. I think it's a good thing for the players to understand that it doesn't matter where you came in, where you were, how you got here, what you were signed for, what your path was to get to the team. It's about your performance, and that's how you make the team one, and then that's how you create a role for yourself. And it didn't materialize that way. We wish him the best of luck, and we're pushing forward.
With him, did you guys decide early on it was going to be tackle or bust, or did you guys actually think about maybe him and guard at all, or is that not really a position you'll look at him for this year?
Yeah, I think in that specific situation, as you know, like tackle is a valuable position, and it's a difficult position. And so I think, seeing the ability for the player to first play that, I always like when I'm looking at college offensive linemen that play tackle, it's like, well, he's maybe more of a guard. And you do look at those things, but I want to see, can you play tackle first? Because the value of the position. And, so it wasn't necessarily tackle or bust. Obviously, we put him at tackle, to see how that was going to go. And at the end of the day, we felt like the group that we took and the group that we kept at the 53 cut down was the best group. And so, we'd watched him play, he played guard before the year before, so we'd saw him play guard, and we felt like at the end of the day, it was, the best group was going to stay. And at the end of the day, he wasn't part of that group.
Since you came in after the first of the year, you didn't get the college season per se to evaluate the talent for the Raiders. How are you and your staff kind of going through the college football season here and preparing for the draft in next year?
Yeah, well, a lot more clarity because one, we have a much stronger sense of what we have on our team. When you're coming in January, you still have to learn what was on the team, but you're learning it without the perspective of being in it. You know what I mean? And being with the players every day and understand, what they were being asked to do is different than what we're going to ask them to do. And so there's a lot. And the other part of that was our scouting department was scouting for a different system throughout the whole fall. So just with a lot more clarity, a lot more focus, everybody's on the same page in terms of what we're looking for. We have constant communication. We meet every week with our college scouts to talk about our current team, to talk about our needs, to talk about the areas that we feel that we're strong at, the development of different players. And so there's there's a lot of communication to keep everybody on the same page of the direction of the team and the direction of individual players. And so we're going through the college scouting piece this fall with just, I'd say, like I said, clarity, a better vision, and more of a purpose in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So, I thought we did a good job with the time that we had in the draft this past year. And, I expect it to be much better here as we go forward.
Having that clarity by getting all the scouting during the season, how does that impact the preparation for what you do at the combine? Because you can be a little more focused in maybe than you were able to last year.
Yeah, I think we'll have a little bit more, for me specifically, a little bit more specifics on the individual players. Like when we got to the combine, we were rushing to try to get through free agency at that time. And so there wasn't a lot of time spent for me on, preparing for the draft and watching individual players and things like that prior to the combine. At that point, it was really, the free agency piece and learning our team still. And so probably just a little bit more of a focused approach. I'll have some more specific things on some more specific players of like, here's what I'm looking for from this player, or is this player going to perform well? We're concerned about the speed, because you don't know what the 40 time is exactly. You look at the play speed. We're concerned about the speed and the athleticism. All right, he performed at a high level, and that confirms what we saw on tape, or he did it. Well, let's go back to the tape and figure out what, is it going to be good enough? So there'll be probably some things like that, and also in the interview section of the combine where you're interviewing players, a more focused approach exactly on, some of the strengths and weaknesses of those players and how it's going to fit into our culture. I think it'd just be a more focused approach.
Is it important to always kind of remind yourself and the staff when the short-term results might not be what you want them to be, to focus on that process and kind of a long-term picture here?
Yeah, and like I said, when we were hired here, we were hired to not only I'd say change the culture and develop the culture here, and we were also hired to build a football team that can sustain and win. And so the focus is always on the long term too. It has to be. And so every trade that we've done up to this point has been with the focus on the long term. The contract extensions that we did, were a focus on the long term. And so there's always going to be that focus. Again, for us, we can't let the results of 7 games really like steer us in a different direction. We have a plan, we have an approach that we're going to stick with, that we believe in. That doesn't mean to say we won't tinker with. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean to say that you're not going to find a flaw in your plan and say, you know what, we're going to have to make an adjustment to this, or we're going to have to take a different perspective on this. You can't be so narrow-minded that you're not open to change during the process, and be flexible during the process and learn new things. But at the same time, the approach, we're always going to look at improving the team in a short term with some short-term solutions with an eye on the long term. And that's how it's always going to be done. And that's what we believe at the end of the day. When we step back from this, we think that that's going to provide good results for the Raider organization.
That said, do you understand maybe the frustration of fans who are like, yeah, but...
Sure. We're 2-5. Like that. As a fan of the team, your expectations are high every year. When you start the year, you want your team to get off to a fast start. You want your team to compete in the playoffs. You want your team to win the Super Bowl. And so the frustration from the fan base is totally warranted. And I can appreciate their passion. And for me and for Josh and for the organization, there's nothing more than we want than to win football games and to see this fan base get what they deserve, which is a consistent winner. And so the frustration is warranted. I'd say we're 7 games in to a new regime, a new organization, a new way of doing things. And for us, up to this point, it hasn't gone as quick as we would have liked it to go. But we're not wavering in our approach, and we're going to keep, stick with our plan, improve it as we go along, and again, we're confident the results will come.
I want to go back to the offensive line, and Diana asked you about, you guys lost your Denzel Good, and you lost Brandon Parker, and Leatherwood, whatever happened happened, but why not bring in a veteran guy? You talk about competition, why not bring a veteran guy in to compete for a spot at that point?
Yeah, like I mentioned, we always look at different ways to improve the team. And but it has to make sense too. It has to make sense from a contractual standpoint. It has to make sense, and I'm not talking about a specific player, but it has to make sense in terms of how they're going to fit into the locker room culture, and it has to also fit in terms of performance and what it looks like on tape. And so we've evaluated all those things. A player that you watched on tape in 2021, and what they look like in 2000. Well, I'm talking about a veteran player. What they look like in 2020, what they look like in 2019. Are you acquiring a player at that time that you feel is going in the right direction? Do you feel like you're bringing in a player that's going to fit into the culture and that's really going to improve the team? And at the end of the day, I think our offensive line has grown into a unit that needs to improve, that needs to continue to improve. That's been fairly consistent. I don't think the offensive line, I would pinpoint that as a major problem. We've ran the ball very well. Have we had issues in pass protection at times? Well, yeah, and you can watch every game, and there's times where the quarterback's getting sacked, whether it's a coverage-based thing, whether it's an offensive line thing. And so I just felt like at the end of the day, to answer your question specifically, I didn't think that there was a player out there that was going to be really upgrade our offensive line for the cost of doing business.
Obviously, the quarterback is always going to be a focal point and a target,
Sure.
For good or bad. What's your assessment so far of Derek Carr?
Well, I would say on the not the off the field piece, but from the mental side of it, very smart. He's picked up the system, learned the system well, and he's continued to grow into the system. And I think that there's a progression to that, and I think he's made steady progress. In terms of learning the system, learning the checks, being comfortable with the reads, and I think he's done a good job. He competes very hard, and I think he's done a lot of good things. And I think he's improved. As the season went on. We have to help the quarterback too. We have to be able to get open. We have to like we talked about. We have to have good protection. Has he been, whether it's him or another player, they all need to continue to work to improve. But I think Derek's done a good job. I think he's done a good job leading the team. I think he's done a good job managing the game. And like I said, like with him and every other player, we want to see continued improvement.
What's one of your takeaway of Chandler Jones' first 7 games with the Raiders?
Yeah, I think with Chandler, the one thing that I've seen is I'll start with the run game to the pass game. From the run game, I think he's done a good job for us. We wanted to bring a player with some length that could set the edge of the defense, that could make plays in the run game, that could be on the field for all 3 downs, and I think he's done a good job of that. On the pass rushing standpoint, I think he's had games where he's had some disruptive rushes and affected the quarterback, and that's what we're looking for plays to affect the quarterback. The sack numbers haven't obviously been there, and so more opportunities. We'd like him to finish at the quarterback more. He'd like to finish at the quarterback more. He still garners a lot of attention. There's still a lot of protections that get slid his way, getting chipped and checked, which obviously would open up other opportunities for other teammates. We have to capitalize on those opportunities. And just like I said with Derek, or just like I said with really for every other member of the team, he needs to continue to get better and continue to improve his craft. And we expect that as we go. And that's what we're looking for out of Chandler and the rest of the team.
True assessment of Josh's performance so far with Daniels.
Been really impressed with Josh. Especially I would say when you're 2 and 5, you really get tested. Your leadership really gets tested. Your approach really gets tested. And just been really impressed with how Josh has handled that. His consistency with the team, his messaging with the team, his attitude. He continues to teach. I see players continue to improve under not only Josh's watch, but the rest of the coaching staff's watch. I think the game management has been good. And I think he's had a good plan every week. We have to execute the plan. And I think that's been something that the team would tell you that we haven't been very consistent on. We haven't had 11 guys execute consistently enough on a play-in and play-out basis. And when you're playing good teams, you have to do that more consistently than not. And this past week we didn't do a good enough job of that. But I think Josh has done a great job, and have total confidence in him and his ability to lead this team going forward. The belief in him as an offensive coordinator, and a belief in him as a teacher. And I think the one thing, again, I'll mention because I think it's really important, is I've seen a lot of players improve here. under him and his coach's watch. And again, the results are the results. We're 2-5, so none of us have done a good enough job, myself included. And so, we're going to continue to put pressure on ourselves to get those results. And again, we'll see where it's all at when we get to the end of the season.
As for examples of which players you've seen improve under Josh?
Yeah, I think, and a lot have. I'd say specific off the top of my head, I've seen a lot of growth out of Foster Moreau here this year. He's improved as a player here. Jermaine Illuminor has continued to grow as a player here this year. Josh Jacobs has continued to improve as an all-around, I would say an all-around back. Divine Diablo, has continued to grow and improve as a three-down player. Trayvon, has continued to improve and grow. And so I could keep going. A lot of guys have done it incrementally in different parts of their game. Andre James has done a great job in terms of learning the communication and how you set the protections and how you set the offensive line. But those are a few examples that pop off. Almost every guy has improved in incremental ways and in different ways. But just to name a few, I think those are the guys that have taken some steps here this year, and we want to continue to see it.
You brought in a lot of wide receivers during free agency and the offseason. Were you expecting this from Mac Hollins, this kind of player and that kind of a leader?
Well, what we said when we signed Mac Hollins, and this was part of the, I'd say, the negotiation process, if you will, was that we weren't going to pigeonhole him as a kicking game player only. We were going to give him the opportunity to come in and an honest opportunity to show what he can do as a wide receiver, and he's done that. And so I think he's improved. He's another player. He's improved as a route runner. Working with Edgar, working with Mick, working with Josh, and so there's been some growth there. And so I would say if you watch the tape last year, he's better than he's grown as a route runner. So you see an improved player, and so that's been encouraging to see. Had new stories about the player and the person. Obviously, we did background research before we signed him, and so we knew what some of those leadership qualities are. But to see it in person, I'd say it's even a little bit of a greater presence than I expected in a positive way. He's a guy that pulls people with him. He's a guy that every day it's game preparation, and that's really what we need to continue to do. Your preparation. And I've said this before. You win games Monday through Saturday. And obviously you have to play well on Sunday, but the preparation that leads into Sunday is really what matters. And he's a guy that prepares very hard. He's a good example for other guys on the team of what it takes during the week to have a performance on Sunday. And he's been, we've been excited about his development.
I know there's a lot that happens to look beyond this year, but do you feel like there's value there beyond just what his contract situation is right now?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's Mac has shown his ability as a receiver. He's shown his ability to impact in the kicking game. So that's a well-rounded player. And so I think as many well-rounded players that you can have on the team, you're again that goes to the build of a consistent winner. Those are some of the foundational pieces to do that. And so he keeps proving that, and we're excited about it.
You guys are 25th in defense and points allowed and yards allowed. What has to happen for you guys to kind of turn the corner here the rest of the way?
Yeah, well, I think it goes to execution and assignments. I think and again, we've talked to the team about this, and they know it to a man. Like, you have to have all 11 guys executing, and so again, I think that goes to the preparation during the week, and these guys have worked hard during the week, and they've continued to grow in terms of how they prepare and how they need to prepare individually. And what I mean by that is what you would maybe need to prepare for a game, and what I would need to prepare for a game may be different. And so you have to find what works for you and what individually you have to do to be ready to play. And so a lot of it's been about execution. It's doing what you've been taught to do during the week, and you see it in the game in real time. Can you operate, and can you execute it in real time? Or if you see a look that's a little bit different, can you execute it? Still execute your assignment? Can you have the communication on the field between the 11 defenders to get the job done? And so that's what I'm looking for. I believe in our defensive scheme. I believe in what Pat and his staff teach. And what they want to do to try to win football games. We haven't done a good enough job of it, like you said, and I think that goes, to the level of execution that we need, and for people to do, simply put, for people to do their job. Beautiful. Thank you.